What's going on, guys? Spencer here with HM Massage, back with another pro technique video. This time we're doing some very deep tissue work on the lower back. I'm starting off with some compressions over the sheets and blankets, pressing downward onto the sacrum, onto the upper hip bone, and just creating some space in that area. I'll be doing a lot of warm-up for the lower back and back in general, so if you want to jump straight to the very deep tissue techniques, jump to this time here. Otherwise, sit back, relax, enjoy this awesome body work, and let's get into the massage. So as I said, right now I'm doing a lot of general warming up with these long Swedish strokes. I'm doing a lot of effleurage with our broad palms. This is to get a nice broad surface area and really just start to work in the lotion, oil, whatever you may be using. I'm using an unscented biotone lotion, but whatever substance you need to use in order to create a nice glide. The idea here though is just to initiate the touch and kind of have the body welcome us in as we start from very superficial or very light, working into those deeper layers, which we will get into. Right here, I start to integrate my forearm, and you'll notice I don't immediately jump into using my forearm and elbow. I'll be using my hands, and then slowly do one or two strokes with my forearms, and then back out using my hands and knuckles again. This is to kind of stagger the use of my forearms and give it a very slow approach into using that deeper pressure. It also allows me to get enough lotion on my forearms so that there's no sticking when we get skin to skin. Because we're targeting the lower back, I'll use my knuckles and just drag the erector spinaeus group away from the spine, and then push back upward, working the latissimus or the lats. Those are two big muscles we're going to be working, are the erector spinaeus group along the spine, the latissimus, the lats, which do have a lot to do with low back pain, as well as multifidus and the QL, quadratus lumborum, which is the deepest lower back muscle we're going to be targeting. But as we go on, starting to integrate the forearms more and more, because we are going to make the transition to using almost all forearms and elbows. Especially with deep tissue, guys, you know I love using forearms and elbows instead of our fingers and hands and knuckles. People's bodies and muscles are too strong and too dense for us just to jam our thumb in there and expect to get deep tissue, and also expect not to hurt us. But with the forearm, once we begin to use it, I'm just using my ulna, the bone along the pinky side, and I'm running that very softly up and down her erector spinaeus, right next to her spine. As I slide off of her spine, you'll see me sinking into her lower back there, and that's also warming up the obliques, because the obliques are kind of the protector of the QL muscle that we need to get into. See, I'm taking my time, going very slowly, and although I have transitioned to forearms, I'm still not using a ton of pressure here. It's still pretty light. And something to note that I'm doing pretty poorly here is look at how my neck is craned downward, really staring. Try not to do this as much. It's always a little different when you're on camera filming, but try to keep a neutral head. Also notice I switched forearms there. It's important to learn how to use both of your forearms so that you don't get too off balanced. And with using both, it's much easier to create a constant flow and a nice gradual stroke that doesn't break contact too much. And notice I'm also going all the way up to the upper traps, the upper back, and then working my way back down slowly. The deeper I get, I'm going much, much slower, supporting my hand and wrist with my other hand, and working all the way back down to the sacrum. Another trick is to use the broad part of your forearm, and then as you want to get deeper or more specific, go ahead and sharpen your elbow, and that will allow your ulna and your olecranon process, the pointy part of your elbow, to start to dig into the layers of tissue. When I'm warming up and creating a pretty broad pressure, I'm using pretty much all of my forearm. Stacking the hands here, doing just a little bit of work on that lower back before I drop her arm to the side. This is very important. Dropping her arm to the side is what's going to allow us to work really into the lats here, which is what I'm doing with my broad hand, and then going as far as to digging my elbow into her lats. If you can control your pressure and be able to scale the weight, using your forearm on the lats is a very effective tool. Not just for the lats, but for the teres, the infraspinatus, and the rear delt. And then of course throwing in my signature move there of running the elbow up between the traps and levator and pinning the neck. But it becomes very important to drop their arm on the side and warm up those rotator cuff muscles as well as the lats, because this opens up their rib cage away from their hip bones. And that is what creates the space for us to do this. Sticking my forearm and elbow into that lower back space created from the rib cage and hip, and angling my forearm and elbow inward and slightly upward into the QL muscles. This is also going to be hitting multifidus as well as some of the erector spinaeus group, such as longissimus and spinalis. You can see that once I'm on this area, I pretty much sit here and don't move for quite a while. This is truly the speed that you need to go at if you want to target these very deep muscle layers at such a deep pressure. You can see that I am almost not moving. And make no mistake, just because my client isn't a huge bodybuilder, she can handle extremely deep pressure, and she was even asking me to go deeper, which of course I was happy to oblige. I'm moving towards the spine very slowly, and finally there I break it, and then I pull the elbow back, pressuring downward. But when they talk about going slow and essentially holding a spot, that's very true. You have to give the body time to respond and release. Here I wanted to be just a little bit more specific, so I decided to bust out my knuckles and dig those into the same QL erector group that we were using. With my other hand, I'm bracing against her hip and glute muscles in order to distract from the pressure as well as stabilize. And I am using my fingers there, stacking them of course, but just don't use them too often. It also helps I have a bit smaller of a client this time, so it's not too hard for me to use my fingers, but it would be a lot different if it was a much bigger client or someone with really dense muscle. But just as quickly as I went specific in order to get some certain adhesions and trigger points out, I bust right back into the forearm and elbow. Now here with this next really deep long hold, you'll notice that I kind of angle my forearm and elbow both upward towards her head and downward towards her sacrum. This is because the QL mainly has two attachments, one at the ribs and then one at the upper hip bone, the iliac. Angling my forearm upward into the ribs is going to target and release the rib attachment of the QL, and that adhesion is going to feel a lot different and have a whole different sense of pain than the hip attachment of the QL. So if someone does have low back pain with all of these muscle layers, it becomes very important to work both the attachments. And you'll notice those soft circles I do with my hands simply once I finish with the forearm and elbow. That's just making nice to the deep area. Jumping over to the other side, just to show that I did balance her out. We're not going to see nearly as much work on this side, but I wanted to talk to the importance of making sure you work both sides always. You can see that her arm on this side is hanging to the side as well, to create that same space in between the rib cage and the hip bones. And once you've done very deep tissue in that space on that QL and erector spinaeus group, I like to finish off with doing a lot more broad specific movements right along the spine. And this will allow me to use my knuckles to run down her spine, use my fingertips in an almost compression petrissage sort of technique, and work all the way down to the attachments of the sacrum, get those sacral ligaments, as well as where the erector spinaeus and multifidus are gonna attach. I'll then cover the client up, finish off with a couple more compressions just as a final goodbye, and I'll let the client go on their way, hopefully with no more lower back pain. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Give it a thumbs up if you did enjoy the video, and subscribe to the channel for more content every single week. I'll see you guys on the next video. I hope you have a great rest of your day.